People have been voting in droves with long lines at polling stations across the country today, a true rarity for a midterm election. Here in Massachusetts, despite relatively few tight races, traffic has been steady as well, with many voters saying they're out to make a statement. And a short time from now, the results will start rolling in. But until then, we're putting our prognosticator hats on because, as both sides keep telling us, there's a lot at stake in this election. Joining me are Lylah Alphonse. She's managing editor for U.S. News and World Report. Good to see you, Lylah. Jessica Tocco is president and CEO of A10 Associates, who was on the Trump-Pence transition team. Good to see you, too. Gautam Mukunda is a Harvard Kennedy School fellow and author of Indispensable, When Leaders Really Matter. Good to see you, too. I want to start with you. Trump called on three women, Kellyanne Conway, his daughter Ivanka, and Sarah Sanders in Fort Wayne, Indiana yesterday. I'm assuming it's because of polls like this. We'll put it up, the generic ballot poll, CNN, men, dead heat, Republican and Democrat, women 62 to 35. So is this a sign of panic at the last minute, or is it a strategic, just a closing statement that he planned to make all along?
A strategic closing statement. What those three women have done for this administration and for the party is they've tried to show that Republican issues and female issues go beyond the things that you would think about in terms of social issues. So what those women show is that Republicans and women care about the economy, they care about defense, they care about security, and if you look at the speeches that those women gave, they were aligned with those topics.
Yeah, but no caravan talk from those three women, the $2,000 child tax credit, as Jessica just said, and the tax bill, small businesses. So was it planned, or is Donald Trump looking up and realizing women are about to croak me?
No, I think there's a little of both. I think it was great planning. I mean, women are not a monolith. As much as people say the women vote, the women are voting for this female candidate, that's just not reality. So this illustrated that really well. But I do also think there's a little bit of an element of knowing that they need to shore up that vote, because the Kavanaugh hearings did do a number with a lot of people in terms of what they're talking about, but we don't know yet whether there's going to be any impact from
Well, you know, it's not just Kavanaugh hearings. From what I've read from people with more expertise than me, is a lot of these women were willing to vote for Donald Trump, sort of hold their nose on some of the issues and some of the language because they cared about what was going on with the economy, but the caravan talk just put them totally over the edge.
I think the caravan talk, and not just the caravan talk, but all the atmospherics around the talk. I mean, around the caravan, you had the Trump campaign put together an ad that was so racist that Fox refused to air it, which is kind of an achievement in some weird way. Like, I'm almost impressed. I didn't think that was possible. So when you put all of that together, it's hard to imagine sort of an approach that's more calculated to alienate educated white women who are one of the key swing votes in the House districts that are going to determine the control of the House.
You know, one of the things that is not, I'm sorry, about to say something?
There's still, though, a pretty big percentage of women, especially white women, who see Trump as protecting their interests, in spite of the talk about the caravan, in spite of the Me Too movement, in spite of all those things. And so I think
62 to 35 is a pretty widespread.
But I think that having these three particular women speak really was a pretty smart thing. They reassured those women who are still feeling that Trump is on their team, and they tried to shore up a vote with the women who have left the team.
And also, one of the most powerful fundraisers for the Republican Party right now is Ivanka Trump. She's everywhere. Women and men want to hear her. She's very popular. She brings in very, very high dollar attendance at events. She's been out all along. It's not like they just paraded these ladies out.
I mean, Ivanka is effective at putting a high gloss veneer on an ugly subsurface. But at the end of the day, you know, Donald Trump is Donald Trump, and one of the things about Donald Trump is he is a vortex for attention. He sops up everything else. You can't stop him from getting on Twitter. And at the end of the day, you know, people like Donald Trump has, as I guess a function of his narcissism, made this election about himself.
On both sides. On both sides. You know, one thing the election has not been about on the Republican side, though, is guns for the most part. In fact, some A-rated, like a guy in Colorado, A-rated Republican Congress people have wiped off the NRA endorsement and rating from their website. But Democrats, some Democrats, in surprising places are talking about, are we going to wake up Wednesday in exit polls and see that guns and these massacres actually finally made a difference on the other side of the equation?
We may. Exit polls are much harder to interpret than people usually think they are. So you'll often get false data from that. What I would say is the one thing that people miss in the demographics of gun ownership is that the number of Americans who own guns steadily decreases, even as the number of guns in American hands steadily increases. So you may be starting to see in some districts and in some places a tipping point where Democratic candidates who campaign on gun control can get an advantage that they just would not have had a generation ago.
Are these the endless successions of shootings? The NRA is not investing nearly as much money in this set of midterms as they have in prior. They're clearly playing much more defense than they have been offense in prior Republican campaigns. Are they not?
I wouldn't say that. I think that people are looking at the gun control issue as much broader, as they should, than the NRA. You have mental health issues that are involved. You have a lot of other ways to harm people as well. People have been talking mental health.
Whenever they don't want to talk about reform, they talk about mental health.
And in fact, the NRA's position is that you cannot use mental health concerns to stop people from
acquiring.
But Jessica, go ahead. We both interrupted you. I'm sorry.
Those are very passionate.
It was my fault. Go ahead.
It's a passionate issue. And ultimately, it's a states' rights issue as well. So to your point, you're seeing some Democrats elevate the issue. You're seeing some Republicans downplay the issue because the issue plays in different states. And ultimately, you see different laws, different regulations in different states.
But when you go to Colorado and you hear a Republican congressman in Colorado wiping his A or A+ rating from the NRA off his website, to me that says something. I want to move on to something else. We could go to bed or maybe wake up tomorrow, maybe the next day, with the first black woman governor in the United States of America, first black governor of Florida. I want to talk about him for a second. Sonny Perdue is the Secretary of Agriculture, who made a comment that I find to be beyond belief. Here is Secretary Perdue.
Public policy matters. Leadership matters. And that's why this election is so cotton-picking important to the state of Florida. I hope you all don't mess it up.
So cotton-picking important. And, you know, I am a fairly forgiving person, and I might say, well, just this pathetically horrible choice of words. Had the candidate, the Republican, Congressman DeSantis, not talked about how Florida voters shouldn't, quote, monkey it up immediately after Gillum, a black man, gets the nomination. This is dog whistle stuff, is it not, of the worst possible
Don't forget the phone
kind?
calls.
What, pardon me?
Don't forget the phone calls. Well,
that's Georgia. We're talking about Georgia or Florida, too?
Florida as well.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
I mean, that is what this is, a dog whistle call, is it not?
What Perdue said was inappropriate and should have never been said. I think people on both sides of the aisle have come out and they've criticized in both ways. And if you hear what was said after the monkeying around comment, the gentleman felt that it was a mistake. He wished that he hadn't said it. He didn't mean it in that capacity. You can believe him or not. We don't know him, but folks were quick to recognize that those were mistakes. But there have been gaffes on both sides of the aisle through this entire election season, which you see.
What's a Democratic gaffes, comparable to that?
What I would say, I think all Republicans are offended on how Nancy Pelosi has called what we've gotten through tax reform morsels. I think people that are middle class feel like that's really unfair.
Underplaying something is not. I don't think
but
it rises to racism.
I think it's offensive to folks that are looking.
You do notice that.
Go ahead, Lylah.
Trump did say that there was going to be a middle class tax cut that he was going to push through, even though Congress wasn't in session. So that seems to reinforce what Nancy was saying about how there maybe isn't as much positive response to the tax plan as there was hoped to be.
I think what's actually striking here is it is inarguable that the middle class got very little in the way of in the tax benefits from the tax cut. But what's really striking here is that you would describe the quibbles about economic policy as in some way equivalent to open racial appeals by leaders of the Republican Party in a country with a history of violent racism that stretches right up to the present day. We just had 2 African Americans killed in Kentucky by someone in a racially motivated right-wing terrorist.
Which got almost no play,
press whatsoever.
By the way,
So, I mean, it's just remarkable that we would even act as if these were equivalent. Just note that Trump also claimed that Stacey Abrams and Andrew Gillum were unqualified to be governors of their states for no reason, as far as I can tell, other than they are black, since either of them is vastly more qualified to be governor than Donald Trump is to be president.
You've also had Hillary Clinton that's called the entire voting base of Republicans deplorable.
So that's not exactly, for one, that's not what she said. That is not what she said. That is not true. It is just not true. That is not what she said. She said there's a third of the Trump voters who were supporting him for racially biased reasons. I'll note that Donald Trump said that you have to be, quote, insane to vote for a Democrat. And you didn't seem need to get very upset about that.
You don't think that Democrats have said the same things about Republicans?
I didn't see the New York Times covering it. I mean, if like one of those is much worse than the others because it is true that a significant part of Donald Trump's support was racially motivated.
But they're not deplorable.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe you don't find that deplorable.
Racial motivation is deplorable, but that wasn't the parallel. She was calling human beings deplorable.
Please let her finish. But I finish your thought, Jessica.
All I was saying is Hillary Clinton calls people deplorable. It's fine, but other people make a comment. It's not okay. But at the end of the day, no one should make racist comments ever. It doesn't matter what party they're on. And no matter who they are, and there's no defense of that. At the
I want
to
come back to Massachusetts. We only have a minute left. Here's Emily Rooney. She was, I think, at the library today, Boston Public Library. Here's what she tweeted: "Half of the people we interviewed went straight Democratic, even for governor, driven by Trump." The last thing I want to ask down this line: the conventional wisdom is, by the time the polls close in about an hour or so, Charlie Baker is going to be the one Republican standing here with a landslide victory. What she seems to be suggesting, admittedly anecdotally, is Trump is so toxic in Massachusetts that even a guy who called him out, this is Charlie Baker describing Trump at the most recent debate, outrageous, disgraceful, and a divider, that even that man, that Republican, may suffer because of Donald Trump. Do you buy that?
I think he may suffer in that he might not sweep with quite as much of a sweep as he would have it before.
But it's on the margins.
I think he's still fine. Yes, a lot of people are turned off by Trump. Baker's so not aligned with Trump that I'm willing to bet that there's a good percentage of Massachusetts people who don't really think of him as a Republican.
He's made every effort to not align with Trump. But he didn't even visit with Vice President Pence when Pence came here for matters. But I think he's...
The exception is the endorsement of Jeff Deal, obviously, who was
But even in the debate, didn't he say that he's not sure he's going to vote for us?
Until he changes his mind outside. Quickly, Gautam.
People know that Baker is going to go and fundraise for the Republican Party and do everything he can to help Trump other than endorsing him.
That
is a problem.
That's actually not true. If you actually participate in Republican Party events, that's actually not true. He's not out fundraising for President Trump.
He's fundraising for the RNC, which is
he's
wholly owned
for
and
the
controlled by the
Massachusetts
GOP,
GOP,
which then turns around and gives money to the
RNC
nationals.
is not controlled by the president because they're not controlled by the candidates. So that's actually not
I
factually true.
think you two have to continue in the green room. Lylah, it's nice to see you.
Good to see
you.
you.
Legally true.
Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt. I really do appreciate it. Gautam, thank you so much for your time.